Well, hey everyone. Don't know where everyone's based. I assume that we're a fairly somewhat maybe global audience, but as Diana already alluded to, my name's Chris Joseph. I go by CJ, and I'm a senior automation program advisor within UiPath. So think customer success if you're familiar with the industry. But before all of that, I spent 10 years in the United States Navy as a pilot. My platform was the MH-60 Romeo. So if you come from one of those Army backgrounds and you're familiar with Blackhawks, that's what I used to fly, but a little bit more apt for looking for submarines was my main mission. So the reason why I wanted to put some slides together and talk with you all today was to kind of talk about, why we're here and why we recognize veterans and why we believe that veterans are important to UiPath and the business world in general, as well as some of the other initiatives that the Veterans People Unity Council is doing to date. So maybe it's worth backing up just a little bit. The Veterans People Unity Council, think of it as like an employee resource group, but it's a group of like-minded individuals within UiPath who share some sort of passion for veterans. You don't necessarily have to be a veteran in order to participate in the group. We welcome spouses and advocates just the same. But the point of it is to kind of showcase what veterans bring to the table because we believe that veterans have a unique perspective that's valuable to the business world, and it's earned through adversity. It's earned through things that some folks may not have had the opportunity to experience. And that's why this program is so important to us. So let's talk a little bit about the veteran business value. Now, I'm sure that you all have probably seen or heard what a veteran means. And you'll see the statute that's on the screen. I'm not going to read that. But the reason why we celebrate veterans is that oath. Every veteran who joined at least the armed forces of most countries had to raise their hand and swear an allegiance to their country and swear that they were going to basically defend and protect the country at all costs. And we recognize the fact that that is a blank check that veterans are or have had the opportunity to write to their country, irrespective of the service that they belong to. And that's something that we want to celebrate. But in addition to swearing the oath and what actually happens during your time in service, there are various other things that veterans bring to the table. So let me back up a slide here. The person or the gentleman that you're going to see in a lot of these pictures, his name is Jordan Gillis. He's a former Army officer, Army artillery officer, if I'm not mistaken. And he was in the Middle East, I believe, during like 2003 to 2005 or so. So what you're seeing are a lot of slides from him during his time in service, but I want to really speak to some of the things that his service exemplifies during his time in. So one of those things is partnership experience. For those who've had the opportunity to deploy or been in the military, we recognize that partnership is something that's ingrained to your role. In Jordan's case, he had the opportunity to partner with local teams in order to make sure that the mission of his unit was effectively carried out in the region that he was operating in. Another thing that veterans bring to the table is a willingness to sacrifice. I'm sure that we've all missed Thanksgivings, Christmases, birthdays, holidays, what have you. And this is something that veterans or is pretty common to the veteran culture. It's something where the mission is more important than anything else that can come between you and it. And sometimes that does mean missing important milestones. And so that's something that we do recognize as being an inherent skill and something that veterans bring to the table for business. Another piece of this is the spirit of teamwork. Veterans know how to work with each other and others in order to accomplish goals. And it can mean, folks from vastly different backgrounds, vastly different. I think that there's even a couple dogs here too. So, like working or figuring out how to work together as a combined unit to accomplish the objective is something that veterans bring to the table. And that's absolutely valuable to business. Another item is a culture of achievement and recognition. I think that I probably speak for a good amount of veterans when I say that veterans are achievement motivated. Like we're the folks who we're always looking for the next thing. How can we push ourselves? How can we become better? And it's not something that's, particularly only something that exists within veteran communities, but it's definitely a part of the veteran culture. I think that if you had the opportunity to serve in any armed forces, you do that because you want to be better. There's a natural need to push yourself, and that's something that translates very well to the business world as well. And then the last item that I want to touch on is the ethos of a servant leader. What this means is, the story behind the pictures that you're seeing on the screen here, that Jordan basically found out that he was going to be a dad, and somehow while he was deployed in the Middle East, his leadership found some sort of way to get a cake to the unit, a pink cake to the unit to celebrate his baby girl that was born, and he wasn't there to make it for the birth. And so, not just the fact that this is what Jordan had to give up because he was downrange and he was kind of, serving with the military and taking care of business, but there's also the fact that his leadership recognized that this was an important milestone to him and wanted to find some way to make this meaningful, even though he wasn't going to be there for it. And that's something that military leaders absolutely bring to the table. So that kind of wraps up some of the different veteran business value items that I had, but I want to take a few more slides just to walk through some of the things that the Veterans People Unity Council is doing at UiPath. So the slide that you're seeing on the screen now is from when the veterans at UiPath had the opportunity to do a local volunteering event. This was in Valley Brook Village in Lyons, New Jersey. Valley Brook Village is considered a annex of the VA Medical Hospital that's there in Lyons, New Jersey. And so a lot of the former veterans that live and reside in these facilities, think of them as like apartments. They've got everything that you would need to live. They also come fully furnished, but a requirement to even be eligible to live there is that you had to be homeless or incarcerated for a minimum of 2 years. And for the folks that are living here, they're not making a lot of money, but in order to live there, they give up a third of whatever it is that they're making so that they have the opportunity to have some sort of permanent structure and permanent residence in their life. For a lot of folks, this is the first time that they had anything like this since they left service. And so this is an example of why veterans, we support each other, not just the ones that are in the business world, but those who come from different backgrounds as well. This is one big community, fraternity, if you will. And so we absolutely want to be there to find ways to be impactful and make a difference for each other. Another item that the Veterans PUC is working on right now is we are honored to become an official SkillBridge partner, which means that going forward, we have the opportunity to source transitioning military talent in their final 180 days of service. So right now we have one career track that's fully online, and that's going to be a sales internship. But for those who, may or may not be familiar with the DoD SkillBridge program, this is a phenomenal opportunity. You're still drawing your military paycheck during your last 6 months of service, and then this is an opportunity for you to be fully heads down and focusing on, what is this next career path going to look like for you? And we're honored that UiPath was chosen to be a resource for transitioning active duty folks as they look for their next career opportunity. And then finally, the whole reason why we're here today, right? Big thanks to Diana Gray and her team who have put together an outstanding program for you in terms of training you for the future of automation. And this is absolutely something that's needed. I think that it's safe to say, before we were talking, I think Ethan had mentioned that he had been doing RPA for 15 years so far. This is a technology that's going to be staying for some time, and it's only going to get more and more complex. And we need folks who have the skills, have the abilities to take in some of this information and be able to run results in whatever business area that they may be in. Maybe it's for UiPath, maybe it's for a customer of UiPath, but we need you all to have some of these latest skills so that you can help drive results in your own career. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop my share, and then I will turn this back over to Diana.
Thank you, CJ. Yeah, we're very excited to get this program started. So, Priya, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Diana. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah, we can see it.
I guess I did that way before. Okay, and thank you, CJ. That was a great introduction of what you're doing within UiPath with the partnership programs and everything that you're doing. So one thing that really, related to me was that, like, where you said the veterans are a culture with achievements and recognition. So that's one such thing that I could easily relate to, because I am a UiPath MVP, and along with me, we have Jeremy Gilliland and Christopher Bollins and Andres Quesada today, who are also UiPath MVPs. We are not UiPath employees. We work for different consulting companies and different product companies as well. And here we are here because we love the product and we loved using it. And it built us an expertise where we give feedback to the product company. And that has gained us this recognition of being a most valuable professional. So we all have these titles as UiPath MVPs. So if you hear UiPath MVPs, that's what it means. We are recognized by UiPath as having certain level of expertise in these products. And I can tell you, we started from zero. So if you're starting today, you could also aspire to become a UiPath MVP down the lane. And I would love to see each one of you participants in the MVP catalog as well. So good luck to that. And today I'm going to introduce one of our veterans in the MVP community, Jeremy Gillen. And we want to share his story. Just a second. My system just decides to be okay. There we go. So that's our outline for today. So we heard from Christopher, and we're gonna like see from Jeremy how was his journey, and then we'll dive into what RPA does and like how you could use it and how you could set it up as well. So here's our team, and I'm pretty sure you've met like the first row people already. So here's the bottom trainers that we will be diving into the automation. Sorry, here's Jeremy. So
Great.
Jeremy, why don't you start off telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Priya. And I wanted to echo that same sentiment, the support from Chris and the UiPath team. Thank you guys so much for putting this program together, supporting it since its inception. And it's so funny, Priya mentioned something about the slide where he was talking about achievement, where Captain Gillis, I believe he is getting a recognition. And it stood out to me because I've never met Captain Gillis, but if you look at his sleeve, he's wearing a very distinct combat patch. And that's not an Army combat patch. That's a 2nd Marine Division combat patch. And I was also awarded that same combat patch. So there's some overlap. Even I've never met him, but it's crazy. It's a small military. So thank you so much for your service, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. And a little bit about myself. I too was in the military for over a decade. I have a unique perspective because I came in as a fuzzy E1. I was in the Signal Corps and I deployed multiple times. And eventually I applied. I thought I had some capabilities. And so I applied for the Army's prestigious Green to Gold program, which selects a few enlisted soldiers to go and get their degree. And I was lucky and very fortunate to do that. So I have both the technical side on the enlisted plus being an officer and the administrative component. So that's a little bit about myself. Now from leaving into that, right, just getting into a quick overview of my story. How did I go from being in the military to being a UiPath MVP? So actually, it wasn't a smooth transition. I got out of the military and I couldn't find an opportunity. I interviewed for hundreds and hundreds of positions and I didn't quite fit the mold. They said I had a lot of great experience, not the right experience. And so I ended up, instead of getting into IT like I wanted to, I ended up taking a sidetrack and I got into retail for about a year. And then after that, I got the call and I got an opportunity for a company a lot of vets are probably familiar with called USAA. And that kickstarted a trail that I've been on for over the last decade. You could say it was a very pivotal crossroads in my career and my life at that moment. And from then, it's been a true rocket ship of a ride. I worked for both the customers and consulting side for about 4 or 5 years till I decided I was brave enough to start my own company called Jolt Advantage Group with 6 other beautiful human beings. And along the way, I've held every role imaginable from developer to BA to program manager. And I've also helped over 5 consulting practices either scale their practice or grow it or acquire new customers. And as mentioned, I'm a 2-time UiPath MVP. When I was Chief Automation Officer for the startup that I helped, our very first year in operation, we won one of UiPath's most prestigious awards, and that was their Partner of the Year award, and the category was innovation. So it's been a wild ride, and I can't believe that the opportunities that have been afforded to me by taking this career path. And over the last decade, I've constantly looked, and working in this space has been a top 5 job from an in-demand perspective since I've been in the field. So a little bit about myself, and I think Priya wanted to ask me some questions. So, before I get too long-winded, this is just, we'll leave
Yes.
this up to see some additional background information, but love to take a
That
question.
was great intro, Jeremy. So I want to ask you, what was your first, like the light bulb moment that made you get into RPA? And like,
Mm.
how did you feel that tech was like easily understandable for you? What made you think that?
Yeah, so very good question. And to be honest, when I got the opportunity to join USAA's team, it had a slightly different name, but RPA, but RPA is exactly what it was. And I had no idea what the team was called or what it even did, but I quickly understood what was going on. And I think that the light bulb moment came in 2015. I believe there was a massive flood in Houston, right? And what had
Oh,
happened
yeah.
2 months prior is that their one of their VPs in the claims department said they have this old antiquated process for flood claims and flood seasons coming. And if you're familiar with this process in the insurance world, everything ties back to the federal government, and they have a FEMA website.
FEMA program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so we had to build a solution that was submitting these flood claims. And the aha moment came after. Well, that was kind of an interesting story because when the Houston flood claim and all happened and all the claims came in, the bot was executing at 100% completion and 100% accuracy. And there was so much volume that the business got scared and they stopped the automation. They canceled it. They're like, it can't be that accurate. And after about an hour of the claims starting to pile up, they triggered it back and they conducted an audit, but everything was perfect. It had 100% accuracy. And so the only hiccup was the business stepping in and say, wait, this is too good. But the long story of it is we won an innovation award at USAA for this solution because the people that were impacted by these flood claims received their claims checks on average 2 weeks ahead of schedule compared to the old process. And so that being able to get some sort of normalcy back to those victims and using the power of automation, I was like, hey, there's going to be something to this.
And Jeremy, for someone, like coming right out of the military program right now, what would your advice be to say like, hey, like this is where you could start? Or like,
Mhm.
like would you advise them like any roles or any courses within the academy that they could look at? So that
Yeah.
way they could go down your path.
No, absolute great question. And so, I mean, even Chris said it. If you're getting to the point where you're transitioning away from the military, right? The Skill Bridge program is definitely something you should look into. This is the #1 automation platform in the market, so it's not a bad organization to be, helping support the growth of their software group. But also, one great way that people in the military serve is Scrum Masters. These projects, the people that work on them, it's an incredibly diverse group of individuals, from the businesses that operate them to the technical teams that build the solutions and the analysts in between, right? And when you're in the military, one of the things that you get throughout your career is a consistent, evolving, rotating group of individuals that you probably have zero in common with when you first meet them. And you've got to find a way to operate. You got to find a way to get through the bumps and become a cohesive organization. And that's what Scrum Masters do every day, right? They got to translate information between different tribes, if you will, and they got to make sure that the boat stays afloat and everybody's focused on the objective. So, Scrum Master is a pretty easy way to get into. And if you're trying to get into this space, UiPath, as she mentioned, has an academy that's free to be trained, right? You can't ask for anything. Then when in the military, you got to do sergeant's time training, or you got to do some self-education, right? And it's the same thing here. You can pop open your laptop from anywhere in the world, get some free training, and we'll mention that there's opportunities for free certification as well if you attend all these sessions. So hopefully I answered your question there for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the best part, that there's no strings attached, that you get this amount of knowledge for free. And people are not aware of that, like how to get started into the world of automation. And I
Mm-hmm.
see here that you have a fantastic industry impact here. So how did you transition from wearing all these different roles and being a co-founder into becoming an event speaker and a trainer?
Mm. Yeah, so it's always something that I wanted to do, right? I recently spoke at Ford, as you just mentioned, and it's sort of been a bucket list. When I was a little kid, I grew up in a small town in Caney, Kansas, right? Population 2,000. And, I used to sit out on the farm sometime and just sit there and I would give speeches. Sometimes I was making the game-winning shot in game 7 of the finals. Sometimes I'd just been, selected as the president, whatever it was. I just wanted to give speeches. And so when I found an opportunity to kind of learn this space and I realized the value, as I mentioned, with the flood situation, right? I also helped AFES, if you're familiar with that organization. I helped them save $17 million on one project, freed up $17 million in capital that they could send to their stores, right, and help for improvements. And so I've always I've had that drive to speak, but at the end of the day, unless you have something to really share, I think that this is the story, right? I wanted to talk about, helping people, get flood claims checks quicker, help people do less boring work, to be honest. And so if you have a good story and you're able to kind of put the two together, right, the UiPath and the community will give you an opportunity. Again, shout out to Diana Gray, and the team for putting this stuff together. So that's how I've kind of found myself doing this. Thank you for asking.
That's amazing. And I think like everyone who starts in the automation can relate to this, because the moment you get to the UAT and you're about to put things in production and then you see what's the ROI on that, that gives you the sense of happiness that the amount of time, the manual effort, or even the time savings that you did for them, the amount of impact that it has. Because someone could just be running a report for like 6 hours and sitting and waiting for something, whereas they could have automated that. And now that person has like time for personal things or like, other projects as well. So very well said. I hope like others in this program get to experience that feeling very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as she mentioned, the MVP program's open. If you think it's too early, just definitely reach out to people, ask for mentors. We can help you break into this space, go through training, find the right connections. But yeah, absolutely. This is the kind of opportunity you get when you get into this space and really start learning.
Yeah, and here's a glimpse of your journey. I see that you've met Brent Haley as well. So that's
Yes.
amazing. So how was that? Like, like meeting all the MVPs and talking to the product managers. Because one thing is you being on the consulting side and like working with your customers.
Mm-hmm.
But how did that transition into like, you showcasing your skills here?
I think that a lot of it came from that capability that I built in the military of where the rubber meets the road, right? Working with all of these groups, whether it was in the enlisted side, having to explain to a general why his, communications or internet was down, to, working with soldiers as an officer, and they expect certain, they have certain expectations about how you, deliver what you're working on. And so I think that led the foundation for me to be able to work with all these amazing groups. And, it's one of those things where if I didn't have that rough transition out of the military, trying to find where I fit in, I think most soldiers and sailors, between and airmen, they kind of go through this position where you've been serving your country and you want to find your next purpose. And when you have the opportunity to kind of find people that are interested in technology, and then you go from building companies to speaking and interviewing with people in their organization, right? It just gives you that renewed sense of purpose, right? You have a good sense of value that you're doing stuff that's not only having an impact on your organization, but the software and the direction of where it's headed.
That is very well put. I mean, thank you very much for sharing that, Jeremy. Because, currently we started, like when we all started with UiPath, the community barely had like 90 members. And today's day, they are at 3 million
3
users.
million. Absolutely.
And that's a lot of people for to be connected in one community, like knowing all the products, it's impossible. So like we help each other out in terms of knowing, like, because you don't have to find the answers all by yourself. You could
Correct.
actually ask, and it's not a bad thing to ask for help. So I would highly recommend, like, anybody that's joining, always like feel free to ask any questions. And there's definitely no wrong question, no right answer. Okay. You can skin the cat multiple ways. So the same problem could have different solutions. And this community is very supportive in terms of like being inclusive as well. And I've seen a lot of people sharing their knowledge. And like one thing that I noticed was that this community doesn't have that IP problem. There's no such thing as like, this is my intellectual property, something that they create And if somebody builds a workflow and that works fantastically, the very next thing is they would love to share that knowledge.
Yeah.
And that to me is amazing.
Great.
And
Agreed.
this is fantastic. Here's your customers. So
Yeah,
tell us
definitely
about it.
a large group. And you probably recognize some of them from Krispy Kreme. Again, just these are programs I've either helped start from scratch or scale over time, right? And very proud to have supported a lot of these well-known brands in the industry. And as it was called out, right, across these organizations, saved them over $200 million. And I don't keep concurrent count, right? I don't know what happened after those programs after I left, but that's, if you think cumulative, that's a massive amount of value. So just very happy to have a diverse background. I think, again, being in the military, kind of switching through units and different organizations gave me the skill set to be able to hit these organizations. That I know that I need to find my place and where I fit in, but being able to hit the ground running and have a playbook, if you will, of how to be successful, right? So definitely a fun journey. Thank you so much for asking me to come and share some of this story, Priya, and thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your inspiring story, Jeremy, because for people that are listening, they might have that, one click moment from your story where they could say, like, I could relate to Jeremy. Jeremy struggled through the same areas in life where they might currently be at. So it's a very inspiring story from where you started to where you've grown. And I want to tell everybody that Jeremy also has a podcast that's called Bots and Beers.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
and it's all about automation. So if you have time, please feel free to look it up. It's called Bots and Beers. And once you're into the community, you could also share your story with Jeremy on the podcast as well.
There we
So,
go. Absolutely.
yeah, please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. So now it's time to dive into the automation. I'm going to hand it over to Chris, who's going to walk you through the automation.
Okay. Thank you, Priya. My name's Chris. I don't know, I did the introductions earlier, but I'll do it again. I don't run a podcast, so I'm not gonna get a free plug with like Jeremy did. I've been doing automation for about 10 years. I've been a 3-time UiPath MVP. I teach UiPath, this technology in high schools and in universities, as well as work for a company that delivers UiPath solutions and AI solutions to the federal government. And I will warn you, as Diana knows and some others know, I'm not big on slides. I'm more into conversation. So as I catch up to Priya, maybe she'll be able to follow along. Sorry, Priya. So we're going to talk about what is RPA, robotic process automation. And a lot of people think when they hear the word robotic, it's the coming for my job thing. And we're not coming for the jobs. We're not replacing, as when we started seeing robots on manufacturing lines and we started seeing people getting laid off and unions and things like that. That's not what we're talking about. What robotic process automation does is it takes rule-based, repetitive, sometimes mundane processes away from people to save, number one, organizations money, to bring more efficiency to the processes, for compliance in highly regulated fields like the federal government or hospitals, banking industries, very regulated by government regulations and industry regulations. Even when we're working with companies and corporations that are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange or any exchange, as that matter, they fall under SEC regulations. So RPA is ideal for that because it's a computer program. Does RPA make mistakes? Only as many mistakes as the RPA developer does not catch. RPA is more along the lines of, we're going to take this work from you so you can bring more value to the organization through ideation, upskilling. So an organization can focus on its strategic mission instead of having its talent embedded into repetitive tasks. That's basically what RPA does. And RPA is just technology, software that can mimic what a person does. When you click on your keyboard, RPA can mirror and mimic what you're putting through your keyboard into those systems. RPA can read a computer screen and tell me what's on, or tell somebody what's on that computer screen. RPA can send emails. I have a bot I have my own personal instance of UiPath, and I have a bot that does my checkbook against my budget. Tells me every morning how much money I have in my checking account, how much money I left to spend against what I've told the bot my budget was. So RPA can do many things on a personal level and for corporations and organizations. Some other use cases, RPA used to be very, very defined by these rules. Now UiPath involves a lot of artificial intelligence, generative AI, specialized AI in conjunction with RPA. So RPA is no longer limited by those general definitions of rule-based. And as I don't know if we're going to get into agentic AI where RPA bots can actually start to learning how to make decisions. But we can train RPA automations to read documents and learn from what they read by involving humans in that loop to say, okay, you got this right, you got this wrong, so that the bot learns the next time. And I say bot, but the automation or the solution learns next time what it did wrong the first time, and it corrects its mistakes. So RPA, as Priya and some of the other developers that have been here since Dirt, RPA has grown a lot, and it's really transformed a lot of industries. And I was having a conversation with a company called me today and asked me if I can give them some advice. A very large company. I don't really know if I can say their name. It's a very large retail brick and mortar company. And they asked me if they should jump into RPA now. And I explained to them they're facing headwinds, retail environment, their products are tariffed already. So they're facing all these headwinds. I said, now is the time to do RPA because you can save some costs and realign your staff to meet these new challenges and begin to innovate past those challenges. That's what RPA gives you the benefit of. We can use RPA to like with my checkbook, our organizations use RPA to pay invoices, in their accounts receivable, in their financial statements, in their income statements, in their reporting, and their SEC reporting. I've even taught RPA automations to recognize signatures on a journal entry, compare it to a database of signatures, and tell us if that person was authorized to sign for that purchase order or that journal entry. And if not, it kicks it out of the system and doesn't process it. So RPA is a very dynamic technology and very dynamic tool. And I, like Priya was saying, I'm very excited to be able to share this with you and to share this technology like I do with all of my students. I'm very excited that you're getting into it, that you're taking this leap. And I think you're going to have a really good time learning this. And it's going to look very overwhelming at times, but it's not overwhelming. It's very simple. And that's why we're here to help you. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. But I think that's all for my spiel, Priya.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. And again, please feel free to use the chat. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer. So far, I think we're good. Amazing. So, like Chris had mentioned earlier, UiPath has a wide variety of products in their suite. So you might be overwhelmed to choose which product do I start with, learning from the academy. So we have picked the core products in order for you to build your automation here. So the three main core components that you need to be aware of are the Studio, Orchestrator, and the Assistant. So the Studio is the software that you use. It's basically your canvas where you design. It's what we call the IDE, where you design your automation, your workflows, you build your robot right there. Okay. Once you've built your automation, you package those workflows and deploy it in your orchestrator. So your orchestrator is your central management system, which basically controls and manages all your robots and monitors them whether they are running successfully, has all the configuration components to them, whether they are assets or any storage buckets. All those features are present within the orchestrator. And so you basically workflow, give it to your orchestrator. Sorry. Sorry about that. I hope you can still hear. All right. I think you can still hear me. All right. So the next thing is, now that you've built your automation and it's ready to run, you execute it using your robot. So your robot basically acts as your assistant, or there's an unattended robot which basically runs on its own. So this just executes your workflow that you have built based on the configuration that you have. Now, within Studio, there are multiple flavors that it comes with. It has the Studio, Studio X, and Studio Web. So today we are going to show you the Studio Desktop and how to install and configure that. So we know that like all of y'all are here in this meeting because you signed up to the community portal, which is where you would have used your email or your company email to log in. So now that you have signed up, which means like it's a single sign-on that gives you access to the world of UiPath. So if you could just do me a favor and just go to this cloud.uipath.com with the same user ID that you've just logged in with, you should be able to see the opportunity to download Studio. Just a second. Sorry, I'm just pulling this up as we speak. So I've used my personal account to sign in, and the very first time that you would sign in, it would ask you to enter, give a name for your organization. And just don't worry about it. You could give any name, okay? And for the very first time, when you log in, I'm going to share my screen again. Kind of goes finicky. Okay. So when you go to the cloud.uipath portal, it gives you the option to sign in using your Google account, your Microsoft, or if you're using your organizations, you would just like use your single sign-on. In my case, I'm just using my Google, so I'm just going to continue. As you hit continue, it would give you an opportunity to choose the name, so which is where I just gave it a name. And once you give the name for the organization, this will be your landing page. So as soon as you make it to this cloud.uipath.com, this gives you the opportunity to download the software here. Okay. So here's basically the automation cloud portal that gives you literally access to all the software that's available, all the products, different products that are available within the UiPath world. Okay, so here's where we are gonna see like we could actually use the Studio Web, but they changed it up. So if you just hit that Studio Web, it's gonna take you on the web, but we're gonna actually download this. So in order to do that, I already have a couple. So in order to do that, what I'm gonna do is if you go to click on that Studio, so here's your Studio symbol right here. If you click on that, it's gonna take you right here, and you can actually install Studio for desktop. And one thing to remember is that this works very well on Windows machine. It does not work on Mac OS, and I'm currently presenting on my Mac. So I do have a virtual machine where I did set it up. So I'm just going to pull that up right now. So here's where you install it. And once you just like, it will give you very simple prompt messages to just install. And it takes less than 2 to 3 minutes to just install it. And once you install, it basically asks you to like connect to the assistant profile. So you can easily connect. And you will get an exe file. You just double click it, and there are just like basically 4 steps to just install. You just hit install, and this will be probably your landing screen where you could get to choose Studio. And once you choose Studio, it gives you to this, brings you to the start page. And here's where we would like basically create a simple process. And this might be your landing page where you can just say like, I want to create a very simple process, and it will start pulling up what will be your project name that you want to give. So in this case, I'll just give test demo, and you can just create your first process. And whenever we are using like special browsers like Chrome or Firefox or any specific extensions, that can also be installed, and we'll get down to that detail in the future. Okay. So far, any questions for anyone with the installation part? All right. All right, so whenever you create your very first process, this will be the layout. The middle area is going to be your designer panel where you will be like creating your workflows. And the one on the left side, the left side is your activities panel where there are over 300 plus activities. And these are inbuilt activities, and you can also bring custom activities through the managed packages from other partners as well. So for all the different products, and you could install any activities that you'd like. And this is how we are going to be building our workflow. So all you do is just drag and drop these activities into the designer panel, and then you will start building your workflows. And on the right side, you have your properties. So each activity has its own configurations. So just say for click, if you just drag and drop a click activity, you can just set its own properties as well. So it's just very important to know just the layout, the very basic layout. The area that you're going to be building is right there in the center. It's your designer panel, and then the activities panel and the properties. All right, so now I'm going to pass it over to Andreas, who will be showing you a quick demo. Andres, over to you.
Hi all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to say it's an honor and thank you so much all for your service. But let's get started on what UiPath Studio actually looks like and some of the stuff that it can do. Here, let me just share my entire screen here. Okay, so I had whipped up a very simple demo of what do you call it? What would be considered RPA's core functionality, which is to simulate a person sitting in front of a computer. And I just wanted to reiterate that this is basically the base layer. It's the very tip of the iceberg. You can do all sorts of stuff in this tool. It's a fully fledged programming language. With some of the products like UiPath apps, you can even build an entire application with a front end, which it's an application that you can launch and then use on your computer that would then run stuff like this in the background and interact with however many systems you want via the background, communicate with enterprise databases. It's a really, really powerful tool, but its claim to fame is this sort of simulation of a person sitting in front of a computer. So these things you see in the middle of my screen, these are the activities that Priya was just mentioning a second ago. So for example, activities represent, an action that a person would take on their computer. This is application activity, and the application that we're using is a browser, in this case, Chrome. So this big box basically tells the program, hey, open up Chrome and go to tripadvisor.com. It's a little small to see. And what we're going to be doing in this automation is we're going to take a trip to Vegas, and we want to find a good hotel to stay at. So we're going to go to tripadvisor.com. We're going to search for the Las Vegas Strip. Then we'll press enter right after that to actually get the search going. Then we're going to have some search results, but they're not going to be hotels. So we have to click into the hotel section. And from there, we'll extract all of the hotels that show up on the first page of the list. Then we're going to want to just add a review column to the table that we'll get, because we're going to get the results of the hotels in the table format. So we just want to add another column so we know what the reviews for the hotels are like. And then we're going to go through the hotels and check the reviews of each one. And again, based on the information that we're getting here, we could do all sorts of stuff after the fact. Like if you wanted to then get an email with this information, or, you know, send it to the list of emails to all your friends and say like, hey, these are the reviews I found or whatever. You could do that. You could put it into a database. You could go crazy. You can do anything with this. So maybe you could go into another website, type it in. But let's see what it looks like. I'm going to step in through it really slowly, because if I just click run, it's going to go pretty fast. So I'm just going to go as slow as possible. I'm going to have it execute each activity one by one. So the first thing it does, again, it opens up Chrome and it goes to TripAdvisor. So just opened it up in the background, but you can see here we're on the TripAdvisor homepage. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to type in Las Vegas Strip and enter into the search bar. So it just did it in the background. There we go. Now we're there. Actually, let me put this side by side so we can see them both at the same time. Okay, so now we're going to want to click here on hotels. We're going to let the program do it, because there's a lot of things that TripAdvisor says to do. You know, like experiences and whatnot, but we're looking specifically for hotels. So we go into the hotels, and now we have a list of all of the hotels on the Las Vegas Strip, and we're just going to extract all of them into a table just with one click. And again, this would be running super fast in the background. I'm just forcing it to go step by step. Okay, and then here we manipulate the table that we got just to have a little extra column. And then we're going to go through each of the hotels that we extracted on this page, and we're going to go to the specific URL that belongs to that hotel. So for example, the first one was this Tuscany Suites and Casino. And then from here on out, I'm actually just going to have the program print out the name of the hotel and the summary of the reviews. So in this case, it should be very good. So I'm just going to click continue here. We're going to a little message box. It's probably pretty small to see, but that's the name of the hotel. And you click OK, and then it'll extract the review, and it'll tell me, oh, that one's very good. I'm just going to do this actually a bunch of times for all of the different hotels that were on that page. So this is Hilton Grand Vacations Club, and it is supposed to be very good. Something might have changed on that page. Oh, there it is. Very good. So it just took a minute. Okay, and then that's Hilton again, and so on. So it's going to do this a whole bunch of times, but to save us having to click through that like 30 times, I'm going to stop the automation here, and I'm just going to disable those prompts so that the program doesn't do that anymore. And I'm just going to run it so you can see how fast it actually would have gone on its own. And then at the end, it's going to actually write our list to an Excel so that we can just get a summary of all of the results. So let's try that. Okay, there you go. So this is how fast it would actually go. You see it's going now through all of the different hotels, and it's getting the review information from each hotel. And you could not only get the review, you could get anything that shows up. Now on this page, there's prices, there's availability. You could have done anything, but I just chose to go with, you know, the reviews to have a simple example. Go extract the pictures, videos, if you want to take them, put them somewhere else. Really, you can do anything that you could do if you were just sitting on your computer. The only thing you can't do is actually take a trip. Okay, there you go. And just got to the end, and it should write it all to our little Excel now, and we can go look for it now. It's going to be here in the output folder of our automation. Right here. Now we have a little Excel file called hotel list. It's probably a little small for you guys to see. And here we have the URL of where we got this information. So this is the URL for the Venetian. This is the name of the hotel in a more simple format. So that's actually the Palazzo at the Venetian. This is how many reviews it had. So this hotel had 20,900-ish reviews, and it was very good. And we can see that the Flamingo is average. The Luxor is average, and basically every other hotel on the strip is at least very good. And yeah, so this is a very small taste of what can be done in Studio. Yeah, and then I don't know if you guys want me to show you around a little bit what Priya was talking about in the properties pane. So for example, when we went to write the Excel at the end, I told it the sheet name of the name of the sheet in which I wanted it to write the information in the Excel. I gave it the file path of the Excel where it needed to write on it. And then this is actually the name of my variable that I was using to hold the data while the program was running. And then all the other activities have similar sort of inputs and outputs that are required to drive the automation. And I'm just going to check if there's any questions in the chat. Can this workflow use an API like from, yes, absolutely. So what I did actually, the UI, if you can avoid it, it's definitely better to use the API because it's faster and more reliable. APIs tend to change less often, whereas publicly facing websites, their UI tends to be finicky or change very often. If they do any changes in the background, it could potentially break my automation because the things, the properties I'm using to point to the different elements might be modified if they change the code on their end. So the API is definitely the more advisable way to go if it exists. So that's the reason UiPath is so powerful, because it can communicate with legacy systems that don't have APIs. So the UI automation is what really bridges the gap and makes it much more powerful than any simple scripting language. And if there's no other questions, then please, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out. I'd be super happy to help you guys out in any way. And again, thank you for your service.
Yeah, to second to Andrea's point, I would say that UiPath, if any of y'all started, like scripting in the early days using macros or even PowerShell, you would know the limitations that it's tied to one specific application or like, interacting with that specific type of system only. But with UiPath, what he just showed was basically using any UI, and you can interact with 5 different systems in one single workflow. And you could just like type it and like, type, send emails. There's no limitation. It's all up to your imagination or what your business process does. So with what he just showed, this was something that needed to be more relatable and something that's easier to understand. But if you do have like, large CRM systems in like, inside your corporate world, be it your HR systems, Workday, and if you do have API access, because some companies don't give, even though they might have API available, it's only confined to developers. So work with those, center of excellence teams and get the right access. And then like they will give you the right APIs with the user role restrictions as well, because they don't want to leave it wide open. So consider that. And again, with UiPath, all of this that you see is role specific. So whatever access that you have within your company, that's what you could automate. And if you do have like a business process that you're working with, and it's definitely doable based on like what your process does. So think of all the mundane stuff, even in your regular day-to-day life that you're doing, that you might be spending like 2 hours just to like, submit a form, or like, like searching for loan rates or anything that you're doing on your personal life as well. This is a great way to save time. And also, I would encourage this to share with your family and inspire your kids to learn about automation early on, because this is a great tool. Because now that AI is so popular, I think the next generation should also know about automation. And I'm going to quickly share about our community. So one thing that we talked about was that we had 3 million users in the community, and none of us knew each other up until we started talking and discussing our problems. Each of us like work on different projects. So not that I should know the answer to every question. So that's where the community comes in, where we help each other out. and they all work in different domains because some people might be working on finance versus the other in healthcare. So the problems and use cases might be different. So which is where like someone might have the idea of how to solve it. And as you can see here, here's a picture with Daniel Dines, who's the CEO of UiPath. This was just recently taken at the Forward event. And here's another community event where Diana organized our UiPath MVP Summit as well. And there are many more like community get-together events that we use, the community.uipath.com, where you can actually check for your local events that are happening. And there are lots of virtual events as well that you could easily sign up to. And I'm going to show you the resources. So these are the 4 major pillars that I always love to use, because forums is the best place to start to ask, ask your questions or even look up your questions, and it might already have been answered because you'll not be the first person to hit the wall right there. And please don't feel, don't feel scared to ask any questions. That's all I would say. And use the Academy. The Academy is the best tool to grow your knowledge because they release like new versions of the product every at least twice a year. And with this, you need to stay updated. And there's like a lot of AI models being added as well. So if you would like to stay updated, Academy is the best place to start learning about like all these different products that are available. And the marketplace, that's a fantastic tool where you can get your starter kits or like any kind of like baseline templates that you would like to see, or some of them even have like already built use cases that you can actually look up. And we've already talked about the community, which is why you're here. So use this community.uipath.com to know about the future events. And I think Dana will also be sharing about like the upcoming events that we also have. And for this veteran series, we have the session 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So if you do have these links, we will also post this in the chat. So please register for them. And if you do have any questions, we'll open up the floor for any live questions as well.
So Priya, great job. Thank you guys a lot. I don't see any questions at this point in the chat. But I know we went through a lot of information today. So if you go to the series page, we will be sharing a place in forum too where you can ask us direct questions. But I did put in chat, and I'll just add it there again, where our second session is tomorrow. And I would just encourage you guys to continue with us this week if you can. You'll see we have a great group of people that work with these programs that really are instrumental in helping people learn about UiPath. And then what we're hoping to do here is build a community around the veterans too, where they can learn together. So again, thank you all for your service. Thank you for coming tonight. And let me just take a minute here to get the right link in here, where you can register for tomorrow's program. But with that, I think we're finished tonight. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Andres, and the rest of the team that came tonight. And we look forward to seeing you guys later. And thanks, Chris, for opening up the session for us.
Yes, thanks everyone. Thanks, Priya. Thanks, team.
Talk soon.
Thank you.